Hey guys, tonight we time travel back to the year 1700, to a bitterly cold, candlelit world where law is loose, mercy is rare, and Siberia isn't a metaphor, it's your future address. It begins like this. You're warm in bed, drifting off under a thin wool blanket in your modest Moscow home, when suddenly, bang, 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 your door is pounded open. Lamplight floods the room. Boots stomp through. A voice barks your name. And just like that, before you even reach for your slippers, you're being dragged out into the midnight air. No time to plead your case. No idea what you've done. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, comment your location and local time. I love seeing where and when people are listening. Now, dim the lights, maybe cover with blanket for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You don't remember the charges. Honestly, there weren't any formal ones. In the early 18th century, Russia doesn't exactly bother with fair trials or defense attorneys. If someone in power decides you're a traitor or that your family annoyed the wrong official, you're exiled. That's it. No paperwork needed. Siberia isn't the punishment for a crime. Siberia is the erasure of your existence. The soldiers say nothing as they clamp iron shackles around your wrists. Not cruel, just efficient. They've done this before. You're tossed into the back of a crude wooden cart, already occupied by two other unlucky souls. One old man muttering about land taxes, and a teenage boy who looks like he tried to steal something important. Or maybe he just looked at the wrong person. Your belongings? Left behind. You get the clothes on your back, a threadbare sheepskin coat that doesn't quite close, and a sack of hard bread that might double as a weapon if thrown hard enough. And thus begins your journey east. And when I say east, I don't mean a short hop. You're about to travel nearly 2,000 miles through frozen wilderness, all the way to the edge of the known world. Siberia, a land so vast and inhospitable, Russian nobles used to threaten their children with it like a boogeyman. Keep acting like that, and you'll end up in Tobolsk. You don't cry, yet. You're in shock. You ride through the snow-choked alleys of Moscow in silence, past churches with golden onion domes glinting under the moonlight, past dogs scavenging for scraps, and peasants making the sign of the cross as your cart clatters past. Because yes, even they know where you're going, and they wouldn't trade places with you for all the tea in China. By morning, the city's gone. Trees replace rooftops. The road turns to rutted ice. You begin to feel the cold for real, the kind that seeps through bone and memory. This is when it hits you. This isn't some misunderstanding that will be cleared up in a day or two. This is your life now. Historians still argue whether most Siberian exiles in this era were actual criminals or simply political inconveniences. What's clear is that the threshold for banishment was comically low. Say the wrong thing about the Tsar, belong to a banned religious sect, owe a noble money, marry someone you weren't supposed to, or possibly just have a cousin who insulted someone in a tavern. You don't even know which thread in your life unraveled everything. The old man next to you keeps whispering about how it's not fair, rocking slightly as he clutches his elbows. The guards ignore him. The teenage boy throws up over the side of the cart. You suddenly realize that will be you soon once the bumpy road really gets going. Fun fringe fact? The Tsar's bureaucracy didn't even keep consistent records of exile destinations back then. A few people simply disappeared mid-route. Lost to weather, wolves, or a guard's bad mood. Sometimes the punishment wasn't exile, it was vanishing en route to exile. As night falls again, your cart stops at a roadside checkpoint, a glorified wooden hut manned by two tired-looking soldiers playing dice. One of them offers you a cup of something steaming. You reach for it, grateful, until you realize it's kvass, a tangy, fermented drink made from old rye bread. It's sour, like liquid toast with attitude. Still, it's warm. You gulp it down anyway. Welcome to the cuisine of survival. You sleep that night under the cart. No blankets, just your coat and a patch of frozen dirt that, surprisingly, becomes comfortable after hour 3. Your dreams are strange. A mishmash of old prayers, warm dinners, and a goose that speaks fluent Russian and accuses you of tax fraud. You wake up cold, confused, and only slightly convinced the goose was wrong. Day 2. The landscape starts to stretch. Forests roll endlessly in pine green and ash gray waves. The sky is big here, bigger than anything you've seen. No cities, just scattered villages, each smaller and sadder than the last. Children peek out from behind huts. A woman sells dried mushrooms from a sled. You realize that for some people, this cold, miserable road is home. Midday, you spot a black shape on the horizon. A bear? No, just a wild dog. Still, your heart thumps. This isn't a zoo. If something wants to eat you out here, there's a good chance it will succeed. The guards get quieter. They stop singing. Even they feel the pull of Siberia now. It's not just distance, it's myth. A place where time moves sideways, where frost becomes your roommate, where exiles go to either break or blend in. You keep thinking, surely someone will come to their senses. But no one comes. No letters arrive. No horses gallop in with a last-minute pardon. You're not special. That's the hardest part to swallow. As you pass into the Ural foothills, those ancient bones of the earth that separate Europe from Asia, you whisper goodbye to the world you knew. Because on the other side of those hills, that's where Siberia truly begins. And you, poor soul, are going in head first. The road gets worse, which feels impossible, because on day 1 it was already a frozen snake of misery. But now the ruts are deeper, the ice patchier, and the trees close in tighter, like they've decided to eavesdrop on your suffering. The Urals rise behind you, low and ancient, their snowy peaks just barely visible now. They mark a border you've officially crossed. Europe behind, Asia ahead. There's no ceremony, no sign, just an aching in your bones that tells you something fundamental has changed. The guards say nothing. Their beards are coated in frost. Their breath fogs the air. One of them starts chewing birch bark. Yes, birch bark, because apparently that was the original Russian chewing gum. Tastes like tree, smells like regret. Your cart creaks forward, pulled by 2 tired horses that look like they've already accepted death. Each mile stretches. Each hour is a dare. How much more can your body take before it simply quits? At night, there's no fire, only body heat. Shared reluctantly, shoulders pressed together under the cart, faces turned away, breath curling like ghosts in the dark. The teenage boy stops talking altogether. The old man mumbles about his village, then falls silent. You lie awake listening to wolves howl in the distance, closer than yesterday. There's a reason this stretch of land was nicknamed the Exile Highway. It's not a road so much as a gauntlet. Thousands of people were forced along it in your century. Rebels, criminals, rival nobles, entire families. Some walked, others, like you, rode. A few died before making it halfway. And still, the wagons keep coming, like some dark parody of a postal service. Historians still argue whether Peter the Great intended exile to be purely punitive or if he genuinely saw it as a way to colonize Siberia with human leftovers. Either way, your cargo. Disposable, but technically useful. Around day 5, the guards wake you early. No explanation. You just go. That's the rule now. Obedience without curiosity. Asking why is a luxury you left back in Moscow, somewhere between your last warm meal and your last sense of control. Snow starts to fall. Big, slow flakes at first. Then thick clusters that paint everything in pale gray silence. The world disappears beyond 10 feet. The cart groans. The horses protest. One of the guards mutters a prayer you don't recognize. Something old and local, half Orthodox, half pagan. You stop that night in a small wooden outpost, manned by 3 sour-looking men who smell like they bathe in vodka and fish smoke. They don't like outsiders, but they let your group inside the drafty barracks to sleep on straw. The floor is sticky. You don't ask why. Someone hands you a bowl of stew. You're too hungry to care what's in it. But you notice something stringy and vaguely toothy. Could be squirrel, could be whatever didn't run fast enough. You eat it all. Seconds would be illegal in a place like this. One of the outpost guards tells a story that night about a woman exiled to Siberia for fortune-telling. She supposedly whispered the Tsar's death in a nobleman's ear, and the next week, Peter got sick. Was it real? Who knows, but people believed it. She was sent east, chained to a log cart, and vanished in the snow. Some say you can still hear her singing when the wind's just right. The old man in your group starts crying. Not loud, just small, resigned sobs as he clutches his knees. He's not crying for her. He's crying for himself, and maybe for you too. The guards let you sleep longer the next morning. A mercy or just laziness. Either way, you take it. But by midday, you're back on the road. Your fingers are cracked, your lips split open when you smile, which is rare now. You start to notice things differently. The color of pine needles, the exact shape of frost patterns on canvas, how one of the horses has a weird limp that makes the cart sway slightly left. These details anchor you. They're tiny, irrelevant facts, but they're yours. One day, the teenage boy points at a tree marked with scratches. Claw marks? Bear? Wolf? He doesn't say. Just raises his eyebrows and goes back to shivering. By now, your body has entered that strange halfway state between function and failure. Your toes go numb, then painful, then numb again. You worry about frostbite, but can't do anything to prevent it. The sheepskin coat might as well be lace at this point. A quirky truth? Some exiles used to stuff live puppies inside their coats during winter treks for warmth. That's not happening here. There are no puppies, just fleas. You've got enough of those to start a circus. After nearly 2 weeks, your group reaches a river crossing. Wide and sluggish, half frozen. A ferry waits on the other side. But there's no bridge. Instead, you're marched across the ice on foot. The guards go first, testing each step. You follow, holding your breath. Every creak of the ice sounds like a verdict. Halfway across, the boy slips. The guard yells. He flails, rights himself, keeps walking. No one offers a hand. Once across, you're told to help push the cart. The horses are tired, too tired. You lean in, shoulders burn. The wood groans. It moves, barely. Every exile earns their miles. This is part of yours. And just when you think your body can't take it anymore, you see lights. Faint, flickering candlelight across the horizon. Buildings, wooden roofs, smoke, civilization, or at least a version of it. The name echoes in your ears. Tobolsk. You've made it to the capital of exile. But don't celebrate just yet. The road brought you here. It won't let you rest for long. Tobolsk. The name sounds heavy in your mouth, like it's made of iron filings and cold syrup. But still, it's a city. That means buildings, roofs, even soup if you're lucky. After 2 weeks of wilderness and exile road despair, it looks like heaven. A very cold, gray, mud-caked heaven that smells faintly of horse and chimney soot. You enter through what could generously be called a main gate. It's really more of a wide mud path flanked by guard towers that lean at a suspicious angle. But the walls are real. The soldiers at the entrance are real. Civilization, however fragile, wraps around you again like an old blanket that somehow got shrunk in the wash. Tobolsk isn't some thrown-together shack village. It's the capital of Siberia's government, if you can believe that. Peter the Great had big dreams for this place, dreams that usually ended in frostbite. There's even a white stone Kremlin here, like the one in Moscow, though it looks like it was built by someone who only had half the instructions and none of the budget. Still, it gleams. You squint at it through snow-flecked lashes, and for a moment, just a moment, it feels like you've arrived somewhere with meaning. Your cart pulls into a holding yard where guards take down names, badly. You don't correct their spelling. You're lucky they even ask. One scribbles something on a wood-shaved tag and ties it to your coat. Congratulations, you're officially registered as a Siberian exile. Welcome to the bureaucracy of punishment. Historians still argue whether Tobolsk was meant to reform exiles or simply keep them somewhere out of sight. Judging by the smell, the latter theory holds more water. Still, this is a hub. Everyone comes through here. Thieves, dissenters, Cossacks who got too rowdy, and folks like you, whose crime is still a mystery. A wiry official with an ink-stained beard looks you over and points vaguely toward a cluster of longhouses. Temporary barracks, he says, which is Siberian for you might be here for months. You trudge over, dragging your feet, feeling the squish of melted snow and mystery sludge under your boots. Everything smells like damp fur and boiled cabbage. Inside the barracks, it's warm, sort of. A central stove spits weak heat into the crowded room. Dozens of exiles huddle around it like moths around a flame, their faces hollow, eyes glassy. You find a patch of floor near the edge and claim it with your body like some sad version of colonial conquest. That night, you don't sleep so much as shut down. Your dreams are full of distant bells, the sound of snow cracking underfoot, and a feeling of falling upward. You wake confused, mouth dry, and ribs aching from someone's elbow. The teenage boy is gone. Transferred? Died? No one answers when you ask. For food, you're given a ladle of buckwheat porridge and a chunk of rye bread that could double as a roof tile. Not bad, considering. One guy whispers that last week they served soup made from boiled shoe leather. You laugh. He doesn't. Around midday, you're herded with the other new arrivals into a narrow hall near the Kremlin walls. There, you're lined up in front of a grim-faced clerk who looks like he hasn't blinked since Ivan the Terrible's reign. He reads names, assigns placements, work camps, settlements, mines. He calls your name, sort of. You raise your hand. Yeniseisk, woodcutting. He stamps a page with a wet splat. You're about to ask where that is when a guard cuts in, farther east. Of course it is, because nothing in this story ever moves west. You're not staying in Tobolsk. This was just a stopover, a bureaucratic sneeze in the vast ledger of Russian exile. Yeniseisk is weeks away, farther into the cold, closer to the edge. You want to scream, but you just nod. That's what you do now. You nod, you endure. Fun fact, Tobolsk was once a boomtown of sorts. During the 1600s, fur traders made it rich off sable pelts. The place was crawling with merchants and missionaries, even had a printing press. For about 5 years, it was a hot cultural outpost, until the frost, distance, and decay made ambition pointless. That night, you sneak out behind the barracks for air. The sky is a sheet of stars, brighter than anything you saw in Moscow. You can almost hear the earth groaning under all this cold. Somewhere nearby, someone is singing, a woman's voice, a lullaby, soft and low, like wind humming through teeth. A hunched man next to you mutters that she's a volnaya, a free woman who followed her exiled husband here. Not all who come to Siberia are sentenced. Some come voluntarily, for love, or guilt, or maybe just stubbornness. You stare at the voice in the dark and wonder if love is really that strong, or just that desperate. You return to the barracks, sleep again, eat again, wait. 3 days later, you're assigned to a convoy heading northeast. 6 sleds, 12 horses, 20 exiles, and 4 guards, one of whom seems to enjoy yelling, "Faster!" regardless of current speed or logic. You climb onto the sled and wave goodbye to Tobolsk, not because you'll miss it, but because it's the last place with walls and rules you understand. You head north and east, the wind sharpening. The sun barely rises. Time forgets you again. On the second day out of the city, you see a man walking along the side of the sled trail, alone, no coat, no shoes. He doesn't speak, just keeps walking. One guard spits and mutters, "Escaped convict. He won't last the night." You don't look back. That evening, during a stop at a log cabin outpost, you warm your hands on a stove filled with dried cow dung. Yes, that's a thing. It burns surprisingly well, and at this point, it smells like a five-star hotel. Your fellow exiles start talking in whispers. One claims he used to be a scholar, taught Latin at a church school. Another says he was a salt smuggler. You realize none of you would have met back in Moscow, but here, you're a misfit tribe, thrown together by bad luck and cold politics. One of them teaches you how to wrap your feet with strips of linen soaked in animal fat, a trick against frostbite. Gross? Yes. Effective? Also yes. Siberian life is all about strange compromises. By the end of the week, the trees begin to thin, the snow deepens, and a frozen river appears like a silver scar across the landscape. Yeniseisk is still days away, but your new life? It's already begun. You arrive in Yeniseisk under a dull sky that can't decide whether it's going to snow or just brood ominously. The town unfolds slowly, first as a few rooftops hunched against the riverbank, then as a web of wooden streets stiff with frost and silence. Smoke rises from chimneys in thin, slanted lines, like half-frozen thoughts trailing off into the sky. Founded back in 1619, Yeniseisk was one of the earliest Russian settlements in Siberia. You'd think that would give it a head start on becoming somewhere livable, but instead, it feels like someone tried to build a town while sleepwalking through a blizzard. Narrow alleys, crooked buildings, and that smell again, burnt fat and pine tar. The guards march you straight through town to a low-slung wooden building where the local foreman waits, leaning against a pile of frozen logs. He's got a beard that could trap birds and eyes like flint. "Woodcutters," he mutters, half amused, half annoyed. "You'll break before the trees do." And just like that, you're no longer just an exile. You're a laborer, a cog in the great freezing machine of Siberian resource extraction. Your camp is a few versts outside the town, tucked between a frozen marsh and a line of evergreens so tall they look like they're eavesdropping on history. The barracks is made of logs sealed with moss. There's one stove, 2 bunks, and no privacy whatsoever. At night, the wind shrieks through cracks in the wall like it's trying to tell you something in a language only wolves understand. Work starts at dawn. You rise in darkness, choke down a bowl of kasha that tastes like disappointment, and march into the woods with your new tools, one dull axe and a pair of stiff mittens that seem more symbolic than functional. The foreman doesn't bother with instructions. Chop trees, stack logs, don't die. That's the job. Your hands blister on day 1. By day 3, you're so sore you can't lift your arms above your shoulders. The snow clings to your eyelashes until you start hallucinating little frosty dancers. And then there's the cold, the kind that seeps into your teeth, the kind that feels like it's not just outside your coat, it is your coat. But you keep going, because there's no alternative. Siberia doesn't offer choices. It offers endurance. The others in your camp are a motley bunch. One is a Polish rebel who was sent here after a failed uprising. He keeps whispering about Vienna and sausage, as if saying it out loud will conjure it. Another is a former priest, excommunicated for reasons he won't share. And there's Mikhail, a bear-sized man with a laugh that sounds like falling timber. He's the only one who seems to enjoy this life, which makes you slightly suspicious that he's either hiding something or just completely broken in. Historians still argue whether these forced labor settlements functioned more like prisons or proto-colonies. Some exiles never returned. Others married locals, had children, and melted into the wilderness until their old lives felt like dreams half-remembered. A fringe theory says some of these logging camps operated as unofficial trade schools, teaching skills through sheer terror and repetition. If true, then congratulations, you're now in Siberia's most brutal vocational program. Tuition, a pound of your soul, and both knees. One evening, while stacking timber near the camp boundary, you spot something strange, carved symbols on a nearby tree. They're not Russian, or even Cyrillic. Curved lines, dots, and spirals. The Polish rebel squints at them and mutters, Ewenki. The local indigenous people, nomads of the forest, masters of reindeer and weather. You ask if they're still around. He shrugs. Somewhere. They watch us, like ghosts. Sure enough, a few days later, you wake to find fresh tracks in the snow. Small, narrow footprints, not from boots, barefoot. No one in your camp claims them. You lie awake that night wondering who or what walks through the woods in silence. One morning, the foreman announces the river ice is stable enough to haul lumber downstream. Volunteers, he says, which means you, and definitely you. You're assigned to a sled crew that will transport logs to a mill hours away. You hitch the sled to a reindeer, a first. Turns out reindeer are surprisingly strong, surprisingly stubborn, and surprisingly loud when annoyed. Yours snorts like an asthmatic accordion every time you prod it. Still, it moves. You follow the frozen river like a silver road, flanked by pines and the occasional frost-bitten crow that looks like it's reconsidering its life choices. Halfway through the journey, you stop to rest near a bend where the ice is cracked. You stare down into the water and catch a glimpse of your reflection. Hollow cheeks, frost-bitten nose, eyes that have seen more sky than walls. You look like a ghost that's trying to remember what it means to be alive. Back at camp, life becomes a rhythm. Chop, haul, eat, sleep, repeat. Weeks pass. You stop keeping count. One day, you realize you haven't spoken your own name aloud in nearly a month. But something strange happens. You start to survive better. Your fingers get faster with the axe. You figure out how to use tree resin to patch your boots. You even start craving the stew. Okay, that's a lie. You tolerate the stew. But still, it's progress. One night, around the stove, the former priest tells a story about a man who escaped his exile, walked 1,000 miles, and made it back to Poland dressed as a fur merchant. You laugh. He doesn't. Happened 30 years ago, he says, or maybe last year, depends who you ask. You stare into the fire and realize people do leave. Not many, not often, but it's possible. That idea plants a seed. It doesn't grow yet, but you feel it resting behind your ribs, waiting for the right thaw. Until then, you cut wood, you survive. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, you begin to become Siberian. Your first winter in Yeniseisk slams down like a trap door. The temperature drops so fast your breath turns solid midair. One morning, you wake to find your boots frozen to the floor, not metaphorically. You have to chip them off with the handle of your spoon. The stove sputters. Someone jokes that it's contemplating retirement. No one laughs. By December, the sky is a pale bruise that never heals. The sun, if it shows up at all, is a weak lemon-colored smear that barely clears the treetops before giving up and vanishing again. Days and nights blur together. Darkness is the default setting. And the cold becomes a character in your life, not just a backdrop. It's with you always, clinging to your eyelashes, creaking your joints, curling inside your lungs like a pet snake made of ice. Historians still argue whether the average Siberian winter in the 1700s was worse than now due to the Little Ice Age. Some believe it's exaggerated by travel logs. Others say records understate it, because frozen fingers make poor scribes. You believe the second group. The woodcutting work doesn't stop, of course. If anything, it gets harder. Snow up to your knees. Axes so cold the metal sticks to your skin if you touch it without gloves. On more than one occasion, someone in your camp doesn't come back from the forest. No search parties are sent. There's a grim logic to it. Bodies freeze where they fall. Someone will find them in spring. That someone might be you. But in the strangeness of it all, new rhythms emerge. You learn to spot frostbite before it sets in, tingling, then numbness, then pain that means you're still alive. You learn how to layer your clothes using moss, fur scraps, and even old paper wrapped around your legs. You learn to sleep like a soldier, curled tightly, facing the stove, one eye open for fire failure. And still, there are moments of beauty. A rare sunny afternoon when the trees sparkle like chandeliers made for giants. A fox crossing your path, its tail fluffed against the wind. Ice crystals forming delicate ferns on the inside of the window pane, like nature is trying its hand at embroidery. One night, you hear music. Faint, high-pitched, not human. It's the wind playing the pine trees, someone whispers. Others say it's the Evenki spirits, forest people guarding their land. Either way, you lie there, half dreaming, wrapped in a sheepskin, and imagine you're floating between worlds, a ghost with a heartbeat. One day in early January, you find a note, carved into bark, wedged into the cabin doorframe. Just a symbol, 2 spirals, interlocked like a sideways number 8. You show it to the Polish rebel. He pales. A sign, he says. They're watching us. They being the Evenki or something else? Fringe folklore in the region speaks of the Leshi, a forest spirit with moss for hair and the voice of a lost child. Historians roll their eyes, of course, but the people here don't. They leave offerings sometimes, bread crusts, tobacco, bits of fat. You do too, eventually, just in case. The camp changes in winter. People become quieter. The priest no longer speaks. The big man, Mikhail, starts whittling small wooden figures, wolves, birds, even a tiny horse. He gives you one without a word. You keep it under your coat. One night, a new exile arrives, alone, frostbitten, but somehow smiling. Her name is Daria. She's from Arkhangelsk, banished for insulting a bishop. You don't ask how. She moves like she's always cold, but her voice carries heat. She sings lullabies when she thinks no one's listening. Soon, she's sharing your bench near the stove. You pass each other notes on bark, little sketches, jokes. Once she draws you as a snowman with a frown and writes, "Still alive." It's the best compliment you've had in months. A storm hits in late February. One of those Siberian whiteouts that makes you feel like you're trapped inside a snow globe shaken by a god with a grudge. The wind screams, the walls rattle, and then the roof starts leaking snow straight down onto your bunk. You leap up, cursing, dodging powder, stuffing rags into the beams. It doesn't help. You, Daria, and Mikhail end up huddled in the supply room, trying to stay warm, with a sack of turnips and 3 ratty coats between you. That night, you all take turns keeping the fire alive. The world outside disappears entirely. Just blackness and cold and a sound like ice cracking inside your skull. The storm breaks after 3 days. When you step outside, the world is completely transformed. Trees have fallen, snowdrifts taller than houses. A few storage sheds are gone, vanished, buried or blown into the river. But the silence is profound, sacred even. You stand in it with snow up to your thighs and feel something close to awe. This place wants you dead, that much is clear, but it also gives you this terrible, terrible beauty. You realize something else that morning. You're still here. You've seen others disappear, fade, crack, shatter. But you're adapting, like frost lichen, like the dogs that sleep in snowbanks and wake up wagging. The foreman notices, calls you by name, well, his version of it, assigns you to tool repair instead of logging for the week. It's a step up, slightly less exposure, slightly fewer near-death experiences. You take it gladly. Inside the tool shed, you find warmth and quiet. You learn to sharpen blades on a stone wheel, to shape handles from birch, to check for cracks in sled runners. Your hands stop shaking. Your thoughts get clearer. You begin to dream again, not just of escape, but of what might happen after. Historians debate whether Siberian exile truly broke people or made them into something new. Maybe it depends on the person. Maybe you're still finding out which one you are. At night, back by the stove, Daria tells you stories of her childhood by the White Sea. of fish smoked over pine, of bonfires in the summer that never really got dark. You tell her about your city, its noise, its smells, its chaos. She smiles and says, "You don't belong there anymore." You almost agree. The days get longer. A bird lands on the windowsill, the first in months. You feel something lift inside you, something thaw. Spring in Siberia doesn't arrive, it ambushes you. One morning, you wake to the sound of dripping. Not wind, not wolves, water. Real, honest-to-goodness melting. It's everywhere, off the roof, down the walls, pooling under your boots. The snow begins to sag. The trees look confused, like they're not sure what to do without their coats of frost. You step outside into a world that smells like rot and renewal. A scent cocktail of wet wood, damp moss, thawing animal droppings, and the faintest trace of hope. You're not exactly dancing through tulips, but your face isn't frozen anymore. You take that as a win. The forest is a mess. Ice collapses off branches like tiny avalanches. Streams reappear, swollen and muddy. Everything oozes. The earth is no longer dead. It's soggy and unpredictable. Walking across it feels like balancing on a half-baked cake. And yet, something stirs in you, something primal. You're alive, and so is everything else. Even the crows return, cawing like they're annoyed they ever left. Spring, of course, doesn't mean rest. It means mud season chores. The road to Yenisei becomes a boot-sucking swamp. Logs shift dangerously in their piles, and the camp becomes obsessed with Mikhail laughs as you fall face first into a slush pit. "Siberian baptism," he grins. You reply with a glare and half a boot full of mud. Friendship, 18th century style. There's a danger, too, that creeps back with the thaw: disease. Historians still argue whether typhus or dysentery was the bigger killer in Siberian camps, but either way, both are unwelcome guests. The warmer it gets, the worse the smells become. You don't need a medical degree to know that's a bad sign. Someone in the next camp dies, then someone in yours. The foreman shrugs, "Boil your water," which is like saying, use the sunblock while being catapulted into the sun. You and Darya start burning pine needles in a tin pot, an old trick someone swears cleans the air. It mostly makes the barracks smell like a Christmas tree on fire, but it gives you a sense of control. That's worth something. One curious thing that reappears with spring: bugs. Swarms of midges so thick they look like smoke. They crawl into your clothes, your ears, your stew. Mikhail eats one by accident and claims it added protein. You gag. He shrugs. You're assigned to help move supplies downriver now that the ice is breaking. The boats are long, narrow, and seem carved by someone who hated straight lines. You and 5 others load sacks of flour, salt, and iron tools into one. You push off, and the river takes you. Slowly, then faster, then alarmingly fast. The landscape along the banks has transformed. Where before there were endless white walls, now there are muddy bluffs and sudden blossoms. Tiny wildflowers peek from the soil like they're not sure they're allowed to be here yet. A moose watches you pass with the expression of someone who disapproves of your shoes. Halfway downriver, your boat hits a submerged log. You jolt. Supplies scatter. Water rushes in. Everyone scrambles. You manage to bail enough out with your hat, yes, your hat, that the boat lists but doesn't sink. The foreman later calls it acceptable loss. You call it near death by furniture-shaped wood. Still, there's something undeniably thrilling about the river run, the sense of movement, of going somewhere. It reminds you the world is big and flowing, even out here in exile. You hear rumors, too, about new settlers heading deeper east, that the Tsar is sending more explorers, that someone found gold near Irkutsk. Historians still debate just how quickly Siberia began to shift from prison to frontier, but your ears prick up. Frontier means opportunity, escape routes, distractions. It means hope. One evening, as you're patching a coat with sinew thread, Daria leans in and whispers, "Would you run if you could?" You don't answer right away. Then, yes. She nods, no smile, just understanding. It's not just talk anymore, and it's not just you. Spring brings with it the thaw of secrets. People talk more freely around the stove now. The Polish rebel shares a map he's been sketching, bits of overheard trade routes, river bends, seasonal trails. It's wildly inaccurate, probably based on drunk gossip and wishful thinking, but it feels like treasure. Daria knows someone in Yeniseisk who trades messages. Mikhail once met a man who posed as a traveling icon painter to get through customs. The priest, drunkenly, that he has false identity papers buried under the floorboards, but can't remember which ones. A plan? Not yet, but there's a current in the air. Meanwhile, life continues in its grim, earthy rhythm. The summer planting begins. Yes, even exiles are expected to help cultivate cabbages and barley patches outside camp. You kneel in the cold soil, hands muddy, back aching. It feels strange, like playing house in a graveyard. But the seeds go in, just the same. One day, you find a broken mirror in a Yeniseisk trader's refuse pile. You tuck a shard into your coat. Not for vanity, though seeing your reflection now is jarring. You've aged, hardened. Your face tells stories your voice never could. No, you keep the mirror because it reflects the sky. You've started measuring days by light now, by the slow, lazy drift of cloud across sun, the warmth on your cheeks. You even nap in it once, lying in the grass, blinking like a dazed marmot. It's not freedom, not yet, but it is something. In a strange moment of calm, you and Daria climb a hill near camp. It's just high enough to see the river curl into the horizon. She points. That way leads to the Lena. The Lena leads to Yakutsk. We both go quiet. Then she says, "We won't."
The next season drips in like honey, slow and sticky. Summer in Siberia is something no one warns you about. You expect hell to freeze over, but you never expected it to sweat. The snow is long gone. The forest bursts into a frenzy of green, like it's trying to make up for lost time. Plants shoot up so fast you can practically hear them growing. The bugs? They return with a vengeance. Midges, mosquitoes, biting flies the size of your thumbnail. You start wearing your coat again, not for warmth, but as armor. If winter tried to kill you with silence, summer tries to overwhelm you with noise. The forest hums, whirs, and shrieks at all hours. Frogs croak like cracked bells. Birds gossip overhead. A bear snorts in the distance one morning, and someone jokes, "Maybe it's the governor checking in." You don't laugh until later. Then you laugh too hard. Work shifts again. No more logging. Now it's transport, farming, and repairs. The main path through the camp becomes a churned lane of sticky brown sludge. You and the others haul stones to rebuild the storage cellars, which had the decency to collapse just as the pickled fish started to rot. A great moment in exile history. Historians still argue whether exiles in early 18th century Siberia had genuine opportunities for upward mobility during summer. Some records suggest trusted ones could even open small shops or act as assistants to officials. Others insist most were little more than unpaid labor with slightly less snow in their boots. You begin to experience just a taste of that blurry middle ground. It happens like this. The foreman's assistant, his name's Fyodor, and he has the posture of a question mark, twists his ankle slipping on wet hay. You're sent to replace him. It's temporary, they say, just a week. But a week becomes 2, then 3. Suddenly, you're carrying ledgers, taking count of food stores, tracking who does what shift and when. You start making marks next to names, quietly favoring the ones who've helped you. It's petty, it's small, it's power, and it feels dangerous. Daria sees it too. She corners you one evening near the woodpile and says, "Be careful, that uniform grows hooks." You laugh, but it sticks in your throat, because she's right. Still, your new role gives you access. You walk into offices, you peek at letters, you overhear plans, who's being transferred, when new prisoners might arrive, where the guards drink. One night, Mikhail gives you a folded scrap of birch bark. On it, a rough calendar, a trail, and 3 words in blocky Cyrillic: when snow returns. That's the goal now. Wait for snow. Escape then. Summer becomes preparation season. You and your quiet circle begin stockpiling tiny things: bits of tallow, scrap metal, dried mushrooms, bark. No one says the word escape. It's too big, too sharp. You treat it like a ghost, present but unspoken. Meanwhile, other stories bloom. You learn about the Evenki girl who beat a Russian hunter in a bow duel, 15 paces, dead rabbit. About the hermit who supposedly lives in a tree and sells dried fish in exchange for riddles. And about a reindeer with gold rings braided into its fur, believed to be a lost shaman's spirit guide. Fringe stories, whispered like charms. One hot morning, you're sent upriver to deliver messages to a settlement, a half-day journey. You take a small boat and 2 men you barely know. The sun scorches your neck. The river's slow. One man sleeps, the other sings off-key. The messages are in sealed wax envelopes, but you tilt one in the light and see a shape. Double spiral, like the bark symbol from the first winter. Your pulse quickens. That symbol again. You return to camp changed, alert, watching. Someone, or some group, is active in this region, and they leave signs for those who know to look. You mention it to Daria, and she says nothing for a long time. Then, you might be seeing the quiet ones. Who? Rebel runners. Not soldiers, not Evenki. People like us, but older, wiser, survivors. Historians have found almost nothing conclusive about these whispered networks. Some call them folklore, others cite scattered evidence, identical carvings found across thousands of miles, exiles who vanished and reappeared in distant towns with new names. You decide to believe. If they exist, you want to find them.
Daria leans close. We'll need to split up before the snow, scatter, then meet at the first fork in the frozen river. You remember the one? You do. You all nod. Plans are dangerous, but this feels like faith. At the same time, life in the camp presses on, as if nothing's changed. People argue over food. The priest sobs into his bread one morning. 2 guards brawl over a stolen fur hat. A dog gives birth under the tool shed. Life insists on itself, no matter how bleak the odds. And you? You've changed. You've gone from prisoner to planner, from shivering wreck to someone who looks ahead. You sleep with one eye open. You measure everything: distances, ration spoons, silences. You even smile sometimes. One night, a new exile arrives. A young boy, maybe 13, with soot-smudged cheeks and terrified eyes. No one explains what he did. He clutches a bag of pebbles and speaks to no one. The next morning, you quietly place an apple near his bunk. It disappears. The next day, he nods once. A silent thank you. You've become someone who does that. A small sign that not everything here is broken. Then, as if on cue, the camp buzzes with word of an inspection. Officials from Tobolsk. Real uniforms. Real rules. A show must be made. You're ordered to repaint the barracks with a watery paste that smells like boiled cabbage. Everyone's shaved. The priest is told to look sober. You wear your cleanest shirt, which still smells like pickled herring. The officials arrive on horseback, all velvet sleeves and judgmental stares. They nod through roll call, poke a few logs, complain about the soup. One of them notices your records and says, Surprisingly accurate. You suppress the urge to bow. Then, before they leave, one says, "We may transfer several of you this winter." Your throat closes. Transfer could mean anything. Another camp, another town, or a pit in the woods. Daria's eyes meet yours. Not fear, just readiness. You tell yourself, hold on, just a few months more. Let the summer run its course. Let the river warm and the roads dry. Let the flowers bloom. Let the bear sniff your trail and the mosquitoes drink their fill. Then let it all freeze again. And then run. You wake one morning to frost curled like silver thread along the edges of your blanket. Not a hard freeze, just a whisper, a warning. Summer's grip is loosening, and autumn's creeping in with cold breath and sharper shadows. The leaves begin to turn in flashes of gold and rust. Birch trees shimmer like coin purses in the wind, and the ground smells like mushrooms and slow decay. For you, this is a countdown. Every shortening day is one less chance for the camp to change your fate. One step closer to snow. One heartbeat nearer to escape. But first, autumn. Autumn in Siberia is brief, beautiful, and brutally busy. The entire camp erupts into motion. It's harvest season, and the stakes couldn't be higher. If you don't gather enough before the first freeze, you may as well start carving your own coffin. You find yourself yanking beets the size of fists from half-frozen dirt, hands numb, back aching. Daria hauls firewood like a woman possessed. Mikhail sharpens every axe and blade in the shed, muttering, "Won't freeze to death with a dull knife, thank you very much." You're also tasked with inspecting root cellars. Several have begun to rot from the summer floods. The stench inside one is so foul you gag, backpedal, and accuse a passing chicken of being cursed. It stares at you like it agrees. There's a quiet pressure mounting. You're not the only one planning something. You can feel it. The guards are tense. Foreman Fyodor limps faster, always glancing over his shoulder. Someone's been stealing. Someone else has been leaving odd symbols scratched into the firewood. 3 lines crossed by 1. Historians still argue whether such marks were part of secret languages used by Siberian exiles. Some say they were warnings. Others believe they marked safe paths or sympathetic contacts. You keep your mouth shut and your eyes open. One foggy evening, you find the young boy, the pebble collector, picking through the ash pile behind the kitchen. He shows you something, a tiny tin key. "Found it in the stew bin," he whispers. You don't ask what it unlocks. You just say, "Good work." He nods like a soldier taking orders. You're not the same person who arrived here.
Another signal arrives one crisp morning. A woman from a nearby village delivers smoked fish to the camp, a routine trade. But tucked under the scales is a sliver of birch bark with a charcoal drawing, a river branching in 3, and the same spiral symbol etched in the top corner. You show it to Daria. She exhales. They're watching. You've begun making careful notes. You don't keep them all in one place. One list of supplies is hidden in a spoon handle. A rough trail sketch is inked into the lining of your shirt. You sleep with your boots on now. Your group has grown, unofficially. Besides Daria and Mikhail, you now have the boy, a mute fur trapper named Leonid, and a woman called Vaska, who claims to be a former noble, though no one knows if that's true, or just a fever dream she insists on. Fringe figures, all, but useful. Vaska speaks 6 languages and knows which mushrooms won't kill you. Leonid can skin anything with a broken comb. The boy is fast, silent, and invisible to guards. You've become the glue. You manage tasks, watch schedules, track guard routes. When someone needs to disappear for an hour, you log them as latrine duty. No one questions latrine duty. Still, there's risk. One day a man goes missing, an old-timer named Pyotr. He's found 3 days later, half frozen in a creek, muttering about singing trees.
The guards call it a failed escape. The priest calls it punishment. You call it a warning. Not everyone will make it. That night, you sharpen your knife. You also bury a small bundle, dried meat, flint, a scrap of cloth with a trail map drawn in soot. You tuck it under a marked stone at the edge of the woods, just beyond the camp's border. Insurance. If everything else fails, that bundle is your fallback. Meanwhile, the sky changes. Clouds hang lower, stars appear earlier. Birds begin to migrate, vast V-shaped flocks slicing across the orange sky. One morning, you find frost thick on the inside of the windows. No more warnings. It's coming. Your plan is simple, because it has to be. Fake a transport request to Yeniseisk. Take Daria and Mikhail, guards trust you now. Claim you're delivering supplies or escorting a sick prisoner. Slip out early. Cut through the southern forest path, rendezvous with the others at the frozen river fork in 3 days. That's the plan. Of course, nothing ever goes to plan. First, the sick prisoner, Leonid, is actually sick, like fever-racked, talking to his boots sick. He can't move. You debate leaving him behind. Mikhail says it's mercy. Daria disagrees. The boy simply places one of his pebbles next to Leonid's hand and walks away. You take that as consensus. Second, the supply list you forged, Fyodor questions it. We don't need more tar, he grumbles. We just got some. You shrug, used most of it fixing Cellar 3. He frowns, but nods. That's the thing about bureaucracy. It forgets faster than it remembers. The night before the escape, the temperature plummets. A full, hard frost. The river's edge crackles underfoot. Snow begins to fall, light, then heavier. Thick flakes swirl like feathers in a dream. It's quiet. Too quiet. Daria leans against a wall, arms folded. It's time. You nod. And then something unexpected. The pebble boy taps your sleeve. I'm coming too, he says. Your heart lurches. He's small, he's fast, but he's a child. Daria doesn't hesitate. He knows the woods better than us. Mikhail shrugs. Could do worse. You look at him. You sure? He simply says, don't leave me again. So that's settled. You each take one item that matters most. For you, it's the mirror shard, the one that still shows the sky. Vaska hands you a small cloth bundle. Tea, she says, made of roots, good for cold and doubt. Leonid, too weak to speak, presses something into your palm. His comb knife. You leave before sunrise. No goodbyes, no looking back. Just boots crunching in snow and breath curling from your mouths like ghost signals. The forest greets you with open arms. Ahead lies the frozen river fork, and beyond that, maybe nothing, maybe everything.
The cold hits different when you're on the run. It's no longer just uncomfortable, it's sharp, biting. Every inhale stings your lungs like pine needles dipped in ice. Snow slips down your collar, clings to your lashes, hides the trail you thought you knew by heart. You don't talk, you barely breathe. Every step is deliberate, controlled, measured. The boy, no, Yura, as he finally tells you, leads for a while, darting between drifts and broken branches like he's part ghost, part squirrel. His pebbles rattle softly in his pouch. Daria brings up the rear, scanning the woods with hawk eyes. Mikhail grunts quietly with every step, but you know he's conserving energy, not complaining. And you're the bridge, keeping pace with both the past behind you and the hope somewhere up ahead. 3 hours in, the trail disappears. You expected that. The snowfall was heavier than you'd planned. Yura squints at the ridgeline. There's a big fallen tree, he whispers. If we find it, we'll find the path again. So you move in zigzags, skirting frozen puddles and low-hanging branches, until the forest finally opens up to reveal it.
the ancient pine, horizontal and splintered like it tried to fight gravity and lost. You cross under it like a threshold. This is it now, the real start. No fences, no guards, just open wilderness and one rule: keep moving. By nightfall, your feet are numb. Every toe is a silent prayer. Mikhail builds a fire using wet moss and the comb knife, cursing in a whisper. Daria rubs warmth back into your hands like a mother wolf. Yura sits cross-legged and places 3 pebbles in a line. You don't ask why. Rituals matter. Dinner is dried mushroom and stale bread, softened with melted snow. It tastes like sawdust and survival. And then a sound, a crack, like a branch, too deliberate. You all freeze. Mikhail grips a stick like it's a sword. Daria motions for silence. Then a voice. Nice fire. Out of the dark steps a woman in heavy fur and bone-threaded braids. Her cheeks are wind-burned. Her eyes are amused. Thought you'd beat the storm, she says. Didn't think you'd bring the boy. You don't know whether to run or bow. She raises a hand. Name's Orsha. I guide the strays. Historians still argue whether there really were organized rebel networks operating as guides across Siberia. Some scholars claim it was just coincidence, villagers helping exiles out of pity. Others swear these women and men had routes, codes, safe houses. Orsha, she's the kind of person that makes you believe the stories. She doesn't ask your names. She doesn't ask what you did to end up in exile. Just says, if you're serious, we move at first light. Storm's coming. And she's not joking. By morning, snow is coming down hard, horizontal, blinding, howling. The world turns white and soundless. Without Orsha, you'd be lost in 20 minutes. But she knows the forest like you know your own face. She uses the wind, the way snow gathers on branches, the echo of owls to choose her path. Along the way, she teaches. Don't breathe too deep, makes you sweat. Sweat kills, she mutters. Stick to the shadow of the ridge, less wind. See that? She points to frost-crusted moss. Means there's water under the ice. Careful. Everything's a clue. Everything's a trap. You travel in tight formation. You take turns carrying Yura when he starts to stumble. No one complains. Not even him. You learn the rhythm of survival. Step, listen, eat snow, move. Rest only when Orsha says so. Sleep in 3s, 2 curled up, 1 on watch. And somehow, in the middle of this frozen nightmare, something strange happens. You laugh. Once when Daria trips over a squirrel and screams like she's being eaten by wolves. Another time when Mikhail finds a frozen frog in his boot and solemnly names it Ivan the Damp. Even Orsha smirks. You're freezing, hungry, hunted, and laughing. Who are you now? On the 3rd day, you reach the fork in the frozen river. It's just as you remembered. White banks, dark trees, the faint blue glint of moving water beneath the ice. But more importantly, it's not empty. Smoke curls gently from a snow-packed chimney. A structure, half buried, camouflaged. Inside the shelter, it's warm from a fire and tightly packed with supplies. Salted fish, dried berries, even a chipped samovar bubbling with pine needle tea. This isn't just a way station. It's a sanctuary. You sleep on spruce boughs and dream for the first time in weeks of warmth, of faces from home, of a loaf of bread bigger than your head. You wake to voices arguing in low tones. Orsha and the map-faced woman. They can't stay long, the older one says. They're too fresh, too loud. They made it this far, Orsha replies. They've earned a shot. You turn your face to the fire, pretending to sleep, but your fingers tighten around the tea bundle in your coat. A few days pass. You heal, eat, wait. The map-faced woman teaches Yura how to find animal tracks under snow.
Daria helps reinforce the shelter roof. Mikhail carves a spoon from birch. You mostly listen. You gather stories like firewood, dry, flammable, dangerous in the right hands. You learn this station is part of something larger, a relay of ghost shelters stretching from the Ural Mountains to Lake Baikal. No names, no formal rules, just a promise. If you make it, you help the next. One evening, Orsha takes you outside, points to the horizon. There's a village 4 days east. Quiet, remote, no officials. If you're smart, you settle there, grow roots. You nod, but something tugs in your chest. Roots or wings. She must see it in your face. Or, she adds, you keep moving. There are other places, other outcasts. Then she hands you something small, a birch token, spiral carved into it. The same one from the bark scrap, the stew bin, the mystery letter. This means you're one of us now. Not a prisoner, not a number, a ghost on the wind, a spark in the snow, a runner. You sleep with the token under your tongue that night, just in case you need to vanish again. The wind shifts again. It's subtle, just a change in how it hums through the trees, but you feel it, like some hidden metronome has altered its beat. Orsha's words echo in your skull, settle or keep moving. You lie awake that night, listening to Yura's soft breathing, to Mikhail's faint snores, to Daria's quiet cough. There's comfort in the closeness, in the shared silence, but you also feel unfinished, like your story didn't end at that river fork. It paused, and now it wants to play the next track. By morning, you've made your choice. You gather your things slowly, not much to pack: knife, pebble, tea bundle, birch token. You leave the spoon Mikhail carved tucked in your bedding, a quiet thank you. Daria watches you, silent but knowing. You're going, she asks, like it's already decided. I need to, you answer. She nods once. Then take this. It's her scarf, scratchy wool, smells like pine and stubbornness. Mikhail simply clasps your forearm, doesn't speak. That's his version of weeping openly. Yura presses 3 pebbles into your palm. For luck, he says, then adds, I'll catch up. You hope that's true. You step out into the cold, alone again, but no longer lonely. You head east, toward the village Orsha mentioned, but not directly. You travel in wide curves, through pine-thick forests and across frozen streams. You sleep in hollow logs, in snow caves, in abandoned sheds that smell like foxes and old secrets. You eat what you can find: lichen tea, pine nuts, the occasional stolen turnip. And somewhere along the way, you realize something unnerving. You've stopped thinking of yourself as an exile. You're just you, a moving part in something larger, a gear in a ghost machine. At the edge of a wide river, this one flowing free, not frozen, you find signs of life. A tiny hamlet, 3 cottages, a chapel, smoke curling like question marks into the sky. Cautious, you observe from a hill. Then a dog spots you. It barks like it's calling down a thunder god. You freeze, but instead of alarm, a woman appears, waving. Traveler, she calls, we've got stew. That's either the most clever trap ever or the kindest greeting you've had in years. You take the risk. Her name is Galia. She's part of a reindeer herding family. No one asks your real name, and you don't offer it. They call you Runner, and you nod like that's always been your name. You stay 3 days. Help fix a sled, sharpen some tools, tell stories by the fire, edited ones. Tales about haunted cellars and frozen frogs and boys who speak in pebbles. The villagers laugh, pass you a second bowl of stew, and never once mention the empire. But the pull returns.
After dinner on the 3rd night, Galia's husband leans toward you. You're looking for others, aren't you? You don't answer, but he grins like he knows. There's a trader passes through the high ridge road. Says he saw something strange. Campfires where there shouldn't be any. Quiet settlements. People who vanish before they speak. Might be worth a walk. That's how your new path starts. Not with a grand clue, not with a coded message.
Just stew, a sideways question, and a road mentioned in passing. The ridge road is cruel. It winds through wind-scoured cliffs and icy plateaus where even trees think twice before growing. You nearly fall once, lose your footing on a shale patch, and catch yourself by a frozen shrub that may or may not have cursed you under its breath. You spot tracks, boots, not hooves, recent, and a scrap of fabric snagged on a rock, deep red, too bright for hunters. Someone's up here. You follow the signs carefully. At night, you sleep inside a hollowed-out elk carcass. Don't judge, warmth is warmth. On the fourth day, you crest a slope and see it. A tiny cluster of structures half buried in the snow. Smoke curls faintly. No fences, no signs. Just a feeling. You approach cautiously, hands raised. Whisper, "I'm a runner." Nothing. Then a figure steps from a doorway. An old man, bearded, weather-tanned, holding a pot of tea. "Late," he says, and hands you a cup. Inside, the shelter buzzes with quiet activity. 7 people, all strangers, all clearly not supposed to be here. A woman counts herbs into small bundles. A man maps something with charcoal on a plank. A child is sorting old buttons by color. No one talks much. You learn this is a node, a hub, not just a way station, a place where messages cross, routes are decided, supplies are distributed. You've reached a part of the underground exile network historians still can't agree on. Some say it was too well hidden to exist. Others believe it was the nervous system of resistance across all of Siberia, slow, silent, but alive. You're offered a role. "Courier," the old man says. "You can read, move quiet, and don't freeze easy. That's good enough." You accept. Just like that, you're not hiding anymore. You're part of the signal. Your first run is simple. Deliver a packet of birch scrolls to another node south of Lake Taimyr. 3 days' journey. Stealth is key. No fires, no direct roads. You prepare carefully. Mittens lined with moss, a cap stitched with bone. Inside your shirt, the packet, sealed with tar and string. You set off before dawn. Every hill is a challenge, every snowdrift a test. Once you slide into a half-frozen river and spend an hour shivering under a pine tree, drying your boots with body heat and sheer stubbornness. Another time, you hear wolves howling far too close and climb a tree so fast you nearly lose a boot. But you make it. You deliver the packet. And then you return to the node with nothing but silence and a nod from the old man. "Good," he says, "another soon." And just like that, you realize you're not surviving anymore. You're resisting. One step at a time, one whisper at a time, one winter at a time. Your feet no longer feel like strangers. They've learned the rhythm of icy paths, the whisper of frozen moss, the ache that builds just behind the toes and means, if you stop now, we're done. You've hardened. Not into something cruel, just into something durable. Frost and fire, as Orsha would say. You've now completed 3 runs, each more difficult than the last. One was a packet of coded names etched on dried birch bark. Another, smuggled tea with messages hidden in the leaves, which was oddly poetic. And the third was your riskiest, a tiny carved token meant to identify a new node, passed to a man who didn't speak and didn't smile, but gripped your wrist in a way that said, "I see you, I hear you, you exist." Word spreads through the network like a fox slipping between trees. You're dependable. So the missions keep coming. But today, things change. It starts with the scent of spruce smoke on the wind, out of place this far north where most people burn dung or driftwood. It comes before the rider. He appears High Command. The words sound dramatic, even silly, like some secret society out of a kid's bedtime fantasy. But it's real, or as real as anything out here can be. Historians still argue whether High Command was a formal organization or a rotating council of exiles who happened to have more maps and fewer frostbitten fingers. The truth probably lies in the middle. Just enough structure to work, just enough chaos to survive. The rider doesn't speak again until nightfall, when you camp beneath a ledge. Then he surprises you. "You smell like tree bark and vinegar," he says, mildly. "Thanks," you mutter, because what do you say to that? He chuckles. "That's good, means you've stayed alive." Over the fire, you learn his name is Maxim. Used to be a monk. Left the monastery after refusing to spy on fellow brothers. The Tsar didn't like that. Siberia did. You travel 3 days, then 6. Up frozen ridges. Across a river where the ice sings when you step on it. Past a grove of birches stripped bare by deer, their white trunks gleaming like bone. Finally, Maxim stops before a flat stone wall. He knocks in a pattern that sounds like nonsense. A voice answers, 2 syllables, barely above a whisper. The wall opens. Not literally, just a hidden door cleverly disguised with soot and stacked brush. You duck inside. And you see it. The high node. Underground, candlelit, mud-packed walls covered in maps. Strings connect locations like spiderwebs. Shelves of supplies. A hand-cranked printing press that smells like ink and revolution. 10 people look up when you enter. 10 people who know your face without asking your name. A woman steps forward. She's tall, gray hair braided with beads, hands ink-stained. "You're the ghost runner," she says. "Runner works," you reply, trying not to sound like a startled raccoon. She nods. "We have a situation." Of course you do. There's always a situation. But this one is different. One of the network's southern arms has gone dark. No runners, no messages, not even smoke signals. A town near Irkutsk that used to be quietly sympathetic is suddenly too quiet. "We need someone who can blend in. Someone who won't draw suspicion. Someone who knows the signs," she says. You realize she's describing you. The mission: travel south, pose as a wandering laborer, and find out what happened. If it's been compromised, you return. If it's worse, you improvise. You agree. Because what else is there now? You're no longer the exile who arrived with a mouthful of frost and a brain full of fear. You've become something else. A whisper through the snow. A traveler with dangerous pockets. They give you a disguise. Ragged clothes. A forged permit. A barrel of salted fish to haul behind a rickety sled, because nothing says harmless peasant like the stench of dying cod. The first part of the journey is familiar terrain, but then the woods change. Less pine, more aspen, the snow thinner, the people closer together. Villages every few miles, patrols with bored eyes and loaded rifles. You adopt the mask quickly. Shuffle your feet, hunch your shoulders. Don't make eye contact. When asked your business, you grunt and point to your sled. One night, you share a fire with a pair of actual fishmongers. They're from Tobolsk. They laugh easily and pass you a tin of peppery dried meat. "Where you headed?" one asks. "Irkutsk," you say. "Family trouble." They nod like that explains everything. Which it kind of does. Irkutsk is strange. Too clean, too polite. Even the dogs look overfed. Posters hang near the square, painted with cheerful colors but heavy with menace. Order brings peace. Disobedience is disease. You find the house, or what's left of it. Burned, blackened beams. A scorched pot still on the stove. No one speaks of it.
You ask a grocer what happened. Accident, she says, flatly. Firewood stacked too close. You ask a child. She just stares and runs. Eventually, a man cleaning boots behind a tavern gives you the real answer. They found papers, he whispers, printed, hidden in sacks. Said it was treason. Took everyone. You ask where.
You stop speaking to people for a while. Not because of fear, exactly. It's more like your words don't belong out loud anymore. They echo too sharply in the cold. They make you feel exposed, like pulling off gloves mid-blizzard. The road to the mines is barely a road at all, just a memory of wheel ruts through snow and brittle grasses. Frozen puddles gleam like mirrors cracked with time. You travel mostly at night, staying hidden during the day. Your breath fogs the air in short, quiet bursts. You wrap Daria's scarf higher around your face and think about how far this road has stretched since the first night you stumbled into exile. 3 days in, you see the first convoy. 6 wagons, 12 guards, maybe 30 prisoners, some with heads shaved, others wearing coats so ragged they may as well be ghosts sewn into fabric. You hunker low in a ditch, watching. One prisoner stumbles. A guard strikes him with a staff. The prisoner doesn't cry out, just steadies himself, limping harder now. You don't dare move until they're far beyond the next ridge. And still your stomach twists. Not at the brutality, you're used to that by now. No, it's the feeling that one of those people, head low, trudging like sleepwalkers, might be someone from your network, someone who once boiled pine tea and whispered about resistance by firelight. You keep moving. The mines are tucked into a rocky valley, shrouded in mist that never quite lifts. From a distance, they almost look like a village. Buildings, smoke, shapes moving like ants. But as you get closer, you see the truth. There's no laughter, no casual fire chatter, just motion. Endless, mechanical, dead-eyed motion. You scout from the ridges. You mark the guards' patterns, note the bells tied to gates, count the patrols. Every so often, a worker is pulled aside, dragged, questioned, vanished. It's methodical, precise. This place is where hope goes to die. But not completely. Because then, one night, you see it. A glimmer. In one of the outbuildings, just for a moment, you spot it through a cracked shutter. A tiny flicker, not quite candlelight. A lantern? A match? No, a code, blinking. 2 short, 1 long. Then pause. A rhythm. Your pulse kicks. You've seen that pattern before. At the high node. Morse? No, something older. A network signal. A call. Someone's alive in there. You wait 2 days to be sure. Each night the signal repeats, slightly varied, a reply, then silence. Whoever they are, they're trying to communicate, carefully, desperately. You decide to answer. That night you creep down the ridge, torch carefully wrapped in cloth to mute the light. You wait for the next sequence. Then, when the air is still and the guards are yawning, you answer back. 1 short, 2 long. Received. Nothing for a moment. Then 3 pulses. Come. Oh, great. You expected maybe keep sending fish recipes, not break into a labor prison. But you've come too far to flinch now. You wait 1 more day. Scout an entry point. A forgotten drainage trench near the south wall. Narrow, filthy, but not watched. That night, you slip in. Inside the camp, everything stinks. Sweat, rust, despair. You blend in as best you can, hunched like the rest, dragging a broken bucket you found outside. You move toward the signal shack, heart pounding. A voice stops you at the threshold. "Bucket boy," it hisses, inside. You obey. The room is small, shelves of coal, 1 broken cot, and crouched in the corner is a woman with sharp eyes and a missing thumb. "I'm Zoya," she says. "I sent the signals." You stare. "You're the node here?" She chuckles, quietly. "Used to be, until they raided the Irkutsk hub. I got sent here with 2 others. The rest didn't make it." You ask why she called you. Her expression hardens. "Because they're planning to move everyone. Clear the mines, ship us farther east. Something bigger, faster. The guards keep whispering. Orders from the capital. We need to warn the others." There it is again. The fragile idea that this isn't just surviving. It's resisting. You agree to help. Zoya has a plan. It's reckless, bold, the kind of thing people sketch in stories but never dare in real life. There's a grain cart. It leaves the mines once a week, half full.
That night, Zoya cuts your hair with a rusted knife. She rubs soot into your cheeks. Gives you a broken pickaxe, just in case. "You'll need to look worse than you feel," she says. By dawn, you're in the cart. It's cramped, smells like barley and mouse droppings. Every jolt is a warning, every breath a gamble. But somehow, it works. 2 days of cold, bumpy silence. At the checkpoint, a soldier pokes the grain with a rod, misses your ribs by half an inch. And then, suddenly, it's over. You're dumped near a depot outside Kachug, breathless and trembling. You wait until night, then slip into the woods. You run until your legs give out. Collapse beneath a leaning pine. And laugh, because somehow you're still here. And the message, Zoya's map, the plans, the relocation scheme, it's still tucked against your chest, tied with moss string. You're not just a runner now, you're a fire starter. And soon, the snow will burn. The map survives the journey, barely. You protect it like a newborn, close to your skin, wrapped in waxed cloth, checked at every stop. If you ever lose this thing, you may as well walk back to the mines and ask for a shovel. Your goal now is simple: reach the high node and hand it off. But of course, nothing's ever simple in Siberia. Snow falls thicker than usual. Your trail gets harder to follow, but that cuts both ways. The Tsar's patrols can't follow you either. Still, you keep your footprints sparse, double back, sleep in trees, eat dry roots and stolen eggs when you can. You learn to recognize owl calls from the real thing and the coded kind. The forest becomes your friend, your silent, cold, judgmental friend. On the 4th night, you stop near a frozen lake. You drink melted snow from a dented tin cup, huddled under a wind-warped spruce. Somewhere nearby, a lynx screams. It sounds like a human in pain. "Not me tonight," you whisper. Try again. As the fire pops softly, you unroll the map one more time. It's beautiful in a way, hand-sketched, smudged with coal dust, but clearly drawn with purpose. It shows new railroad extensions, troop movement paths, and, crucially, where entire villages are being repurposed into labor transfer stations. One red dot is circled 3 times. You don't know why. Zoya didn't either. She just said, "They're moving something big there." Historians still argue whether that marked location ended up being a weapons depot, a secret prison, or the earliest failed prototype of a trans-Siberian supply chain. The evidence is lost in frost. But whatever it was, it mattered. And now, it's yours to carry. Your next 2 days are a test of every instinct you've developed. How to read broken branches, which crow calls mean humans nearby, where snow hides rotten ice. You're no longer guessing. You're a trained creature of exile now. And you reach the ridge. That steep, unforgettable edge of land where the high node lives behind a stone facade and a whispered password. Only this time, it's silent. No smoke, no signs. You wait 3 hours before approaching. And when you reach the door, your gut twists. It's open. Not broken, not smashed, just open.
as if someone left in a hurry and didn't bother to close it behind them. You step inside slowly. The room is cold. Half the candles are burned to stubs. A pot sits on the hearth, charred at the edges. The maps are gone. So are the people. It looks abandoned. Except for one thing. On the central table, a strip of cloth rests, green, stained, folded into a rough triangle. You recognize it. Daria's scarf. The same one she wrapped around your neck back in Section 3, before you were even a runner. It still smells like pine smoke and nettles. You touch it like it might vanish. And on the wall behind it, scratched into the mud plaster, you see 3 words. Ghost Crow Circle. That's it. Cryptic? Yes. Helpful? You hope so. Because in the network's codebook, passed orally and updated every full moon, Ghost Crow refers to a node in hiding, and circle implies reconnection, a regrouping of scattered cells. You were never told where that is, but Maxim might know. You leave the node quickly, back into the snow. Follow the ridgeline, then double back north.
On the 4th, you spot a fire. Tiny, low, no smoke. You approach carefully, and there he is. Same fur coat, same maddening calm. "Took you long enough," he says. You sit down without answering. Just hand him the scarf and the message. He reads it, brow furrowing, then nods. "There at Solovey's grave." You blink. "That's a real place?" He snorts. "Of course not, but it exists." Helpful. Turns out, Solovey's grave is a real nickname for a cluster of ice caves south of Lake Baikal. It's so deep and treacherous that most animals won't even go near it. The network used to say it was where lies go to freeze, hence the poetic moniker. And that's where your people are now, regrouped. You and Maxim travel together this time. He's slower than you remember. A cough rattles his chest. You ask him what's wrong. "Time," he says. "It's catching up." He pauses. "Don't let it catch you, too." You want to joke. Ask if outrunning time is easier than outrunning wolves, but you don't, because you see the truth in his eyes. You travel for 6 days, skirting old paths and frozen ravines. On the 7th night, you find it. The entrance is barely a crack in the rock, hidden behind a curtain of icicles that tinkle like wind chimes when touched. You slip through sideways. Inside, warmth. Not literal heat, but the kind of warmth that comes from whispered voices, flickering firelight, and the smell of stew made from something vaguely edible. And faces. So many faces. Daria, Orsha, even the stern cartographer woman with the ink-stained hands. They look at you like a ghost, then like a miracle. The room is chaos and relief all at once. People hugging, crying, asking where you've been. You hand over the map wordlessly. The cartographer takes it, studies it, and nods. "We'll copy it, disseminate it west. This will change everything." You almost collapse right there, but Orsha catches you. "Rest," she says. "You did it." Not "you survived," not "you're lucky," but "you did it." And that makes all the difference. Later, by the fire, Daria hands you a mug of something warm and sour. "You never even said goodbye," she teases. You shrug. "Didn't think I'd need to." She pokes your side. "Next time, leave a note." Next time. That phrase lingers. Because suddenly, this feels less like a punishment and more like a beginning. And outside the caves, snow falls quietly. Not like a threat, like a curtain, waiting to rise again. You sleep for 16 hours. Maybe more. There's no real clock down here, and the firelight flickers the same whether it's dawn or dusk. When you finally wake up,
It's to the gentle sounds of voices arguing over stew ingredients and someone playing a shaky tune on a wooden flute made from birch. The world above is snow and iron, but down here it feels like hope has breath. Not warmth, don't get carried away. You're still bundled in wool that smells like goat and regret, and the floor is damp enough to pickle your toes if you stand still too long. But people smile. Some of them even laugh. This is what a living resistance looks like. You learn quickly that the people here have split into units. Some copy maps by firelight. Others train with makeshift weapons. One group, mostly older women and one terrifying man named Victor, handle herbal medicine and teach newcomers how not to die from eating the wrong berries. Your job, at least at first, is listening. Because after carrying Zoya's map and surviving the mines, you're something of a legend, which is funny considering you still have dreams about nearly freezing to death in a grain cart. But people want to hear your story. They gather around while you describe the mines, the convoy, the blinking light behind the shutter. Daria records it all on birch bark. She adds it to the living ledger, a growing archive of personal accounts, sketches, and songs. It's how they pass stories when paper is scarce and reading is dangerous. It's also how you discover a fringe tidbit that makes you snort out your pine tea. One guy claims that Peter the Great once ordered a team of botanists to grow banana trees in Siberia. Spoiler, they died. The trees, not the botanists. Probably. Still, the optimism behind that order feels familiar. You're all trying to grow something unnatural in frozen ground. It takes 2 weeks before Maxim.
This new mission is simple and impossible. Carry the updated network ledger to a sympathizer in Kazan. That's almost 2,000 kilometers away, through mountains, patrols, rivers, and at least 4 dialects you barely understand. No pressure. The next few days are a blur of preparation. The cartographer, her name's Anya, you finally learn, wraps the ledger in waxed leather and stitches it into the lining of your coat. If anyone strips you, she says, bite them. Victor hands you a pouch of dried moss and mushrooms. Boil these in pine tea. You'll hallucinate less than starving. You're not reassured. Daria gives you a silver thimble. It once belonged to her mother. When you miss home, she says, touch it. You don't ask if she means the cave or your life before exile. You leave at night, the entrance veiled once more in icicles. No one waves. That's the rule. Too risky. But someone presses a warm hand to your shoulder just before you vanish into the trees. And then you're alone again. The road west is less brutal than you remember, but only just. The cold has shifted from gnawing to sly. It waits for your moments of inattention, your weakest hours. But you've learned how to travel now, how to ration food, how to avoid towns unless absolutely necessary, how to read snow like a book written in silence. You pass through abandoned outposts and hollow villages where only the crows seem permanent. In one town, you find an Orthodox priest who offers you shelter. He has one eye and a pair of boots that are somehow older than his church. He gives you soup and asks nothing in return. As you leave, he mutters, "The Tsar cannot silence the wind." You nod, unsure if that's a proverb, a warning, or a sign he's been drinking his own incense. Historians still argue whether the underground resistance used religious networks to transmit messages. Some claim that nuns embroidered codes into vestments. Others insist that's nonsense. But walking west, you feel those myths all around you. Like wind. You pass a burned-out village where the snow still smells faintly of ash. You don't stop. You don't want to know. By the time you reach the foothills of the Urals, your boots are falling apart and your fingernails have turned purple. You trade a carving of a bear you made from driftwood for a bowl of porridge and a dry scarf. The old woman who accepts it touches your face gently before sending you on. "Your soul is too loud," she whispers. "Learn to hum, not shout." You hum for 3 straight days after that, just in case she was serious. At last, you arrive in Kazan.
You sneak in through the southern fields, through freezing sleet and the stench of chimney smoke. You count the steps from the wall to the bakery, then the turn toward the candle shop. And finally, you reach the tailor's. It's an old storefront with 3 faded bolts of cloth in the window and a cat that looks like it owes someone money. You knock twice, pause, then scratch the doorframe. A man answers. Pale eyes, no smile. You say the phrase, "Winter carries longer stories." He replies, "Only when we listen to the snow." You're in. The shop is a front. Beneath the bolts of cloth lies a trapdoor. The man, his name is Fedor, leads you down into another cellar, smaller than Solovey's grave, but warm. You hand him the coat. He doesn't even blink, just begins unpicking the stitches. "Good work," he says. You ask if he can send anything back east, a message. He nods once. You scribble 3 words on a scrap of linen and hand it over. "I touched it." He doesn't ask what it means. And you don't explain that it's about the thimble, that it means you thought of her beneath the weight of snow and silence, and you're still thinking of her now. You leave the tailor's with a new coat, 2 rolls of hard bread, and a sense that something's shifting. Not fast, but real. You're halfway back across the city when it hits you. Not metaphorically, literally, a wall of slush from a carriage wheel right to the face. Kazan, you quickly learn, is no haven. It's crowded, suspicious, and everyone's watching everyone else. You don't blend here. Too quiet, too twitchy, too clean thanks to the tailor's coat. You look like someone who's trying not to be noticed. And that's basically the same as waving a big red banner that says, "Hello, arrest me." You take the alleys. At one point, you pass a pair of Cossack guards arguing over whose boots smell worse. One kicks the other. The smell loses. You duck behind a pile of firewood, hold your breath, and count to 30. Then you're gone. Your next stop is the riverfront. The Kazanka is half frozen and groaning like an old door. Barges sit idle under ice-rimed ropes, waiting for the thaw. Your contact here is supposed to be a woman who sells candles but doesn't light them. Because, of course she is. You find her stall near the fish market. Her fingers are red with cold, her scarf pulled so high only her eyes show. You pick up a candle, smell it, then say, "Smells like frost." She replies, "Burns like memory." Classic. She nods once and gestures to a bundled sled. "West," she says softly. You blink. "Already?" She shrugs. "The ledger's moving faster now. So are the people. We're building paths." You realize then, this isn't just about Kazan. It's about spreading the network even further. Samara, Nizhny, Moscow, maybe even Poland if the snow behaves. And you're going too, whether you want to or not. The sled is cramped, hidden beneath crates of smoked fish and wool. It smells like wet dreams and tragedy, but it moves. You travel in silence for days, barely able to stretch your legs. When you finally uncramp near a checkpoint town, your knees sound like furniture being reassembled. Your job now is subtle. Whispers, not running. You're carrying code phrases, not maps. Messages sewn into seams. Sometimes you deliver a string of words, like "the wheat remembers." Sometimes it's an object, a thimble, a dyed feather, a lump of salt shaped like a teardrop. You don't always know what they mean. That's the point. Historians still argue whether this was the birth of true covert networks in Imperial Russia. Some claim it was spontaneous. Others say it was orchestrated from within the Tsar's own guard. One particularly stubborn professor insists it was all just coincidence and paranoia. He's missing the point. Because coincidence doesn't get you to the next city alive. Your network is working now. You're part of something huge. You feel it in the way strangers nod without smiling. In the tea that's always one sip too warm when you arrive. In the boots left outside the wrong door on purpose. Then comes the night you almost die again, because of a loaf of bread. You're supposed to leave it untouched. That's the signal. It's poisoned, or marked, or meant for someone else. But you're starving, and the person watching you isn't watching you. They're just watching the table. So you reach. Take a piece. And the woman 3 tables over slaps it from your hand with a force that could humble a bear. She hisses, "Do you want to die?" You don't answer. You're too busy trying not to pass out from shame and hunger. Later, she finds you outside, hands you a real loaf. "Idiot," she says. "Thank you," you reply. She softens. "You're lucky I saw you. Last guy didn't get a second slap." You never see her again, but you remember her forever. Like a punctuation mark in your memory. Bread, slap, lesson learned. Eventually, you're given a different kind of task. Not a message, not a map, a person. His name is Pavel, 12 years old, terrified of everything, including his own shadow and at least 3 types of bread. He's the son of a dissident who got caught. The mother vanished. The network wants him moved east to safety. Back to Solovey's grave, if you can make it. You're not a childminder. You don't want this job. But you do it anyway. Because when you look into his eyes, wide, gray, still shiny, you see your own, back when you first arrived in the mines. So you teach him. How to step without sound. How to wrap his feet twice to avoid frostbite. How to smile at guards just enough but never too much. How to hum softly when the cold gets too loud. You teach him your old lullaby too, the one your sister sang when the power went out. He doesn't know the words, he just hums along, and it's enough.
Traveling with a child is slower, more dangerous, but strangely, more human. People are kinder to you. They see the boy and their eyes soften. He becomes your passport, your excuse, your shield. But also your heart. That part's harder. Because now, if something goes wrong, it's not just you at risk, it's him. In one village, a local constable gets too curious, starts asking questions. You smile, joke about adoption, say your wife died, play the pity card. It works. Barely. You leave that night, under moonlight, across cracking ice and through whispering woods. When you finally make it back to Solovey's grave, there's a new tunnel, reinforced, wider, built to shelter more. The boy is met with open arms. Daria hugs him like she already knows his name. Someone gives him stew. Someone else gives you a thimble. A different one. Yours was taken by a guard 2 towns back. This one is hers again. I remembered, Daria says softly. You want to see something. Instead, you sit with her in the corner of the cave, fire dancing on the stone walls, and breathe. Pavel's laughter echoes behind you. You're still here, still moving, still humming, and maybe, just maybe, the wind has started humming back. The resistance grows like frost on a window pane, slow, quiet, but beautifully unstoppable. You spend the next few weeks resting, or what passes for rest in Solovey's grave. There are no pillows, just bundles of straw and hopes wrapped in cloth. But there's food, there are hands to shake, and for the first time in a long time, you don't wake up wondering if your breath will fog the air one last time. The boy, Pavel, becomes something of a cave celebrity. He learns fast, faster than you ever did. He trains with Victor, who softens just a little when the kid calls him Dedushka, Grandpa. He takes over your job, copying messages onto bark. His handwriting is terrible, but his heart is steady. You feel proud and ancient. You're 28. You start noticing the changes. There are more people now, new arrivals every few days. Some come from farther west, some come bearing news. The Tsar is building another fortress. Peter the Great, always busy, is now recruiting foreigners to train his new modern army. Historians still argue whether this modernizing push made exile worse or better. Some say it distracted the regime. Others argue it made punishments harsher. Exile became a demonstration of backwardness to be wiped clean. But you're not in the mood for academic debates. Not when someone whispers about Novaya Zemlya, a place even colder than here, where they say the frost howls and exiles disappear into white silence, never seen again. It's supposed to be punishment for escapees and repeat offenders,
Guess who's officially been labeled both? You. A message arrives, scrawled in a frantic hand. You read it twice before passing it to Daria. Capture order issued, high threat, red seal, possible transfer. You feel the breath leave the cave. So do they. This isn't a drill anymore. They start the evacuation. Solovey's grave can't hold everyone, and it was never meant to be permanent. Maxim, still alive somehow, insists they scatter. Small cells, safer. But not for you. You're marked. They need you gone. A plan forms, not just to flee, but to distract. A fake trail, something bold, maybe. You're the bait. You offer before anyone can even ask, because you know the terrain now. You know the network. And, let's be honest, you've gotten good at this whole not dying yet routine. Zoya, the cartographer, returns from a scouting mission. She brings you a new map. It's different this time. The trails are tighter, more precise. She's been refining the web. What began as a lifeline is now a web of tiny revolutions hiding in the forests and villages. And your path? It runs straight toward a military depot outside Tobolsk. Yes, that Tobolsk. Home to imperial outposts, soldiers, and enough muskets to rewrite your definition of bad idea. But the idea is this: get seen, make noise, lead them away. You memorize the routes, burn the paper, and eat the ashes with cold potato soup. Everyone claps for your bravery, quietly.
And then she's gone, like a snowflake that lands and vanishes. You run. You make it to Tobolsk in 3 days, running through thin forests, crossing rivers on brittle ice, and narrowly avoiding a patrol by pretending to be drunk and lost. Your accent is terrible, but your wobble is convincing. The depot is chaos. A shipment's just arrived. Cannon barrels, uniforms, tobacco. You sneak in wearing a coat borrowed from a corpse you definitely didn't kill. He fell into a ravine. Lucky you, unlucky him. Your goal? Leave a trail. You accidentally drop coded scraps in the latrine. You whisper a resistance phrase to a cook's assistant. You post a note in a boot. The wind listens. It works too well. They catch on. Within hours, the depot is on lockdown. You hear your name shouted, or more accurately, a version of your name that's been brutalized by accents and suspicion. You sprint through the snow, guards behind you, dogs barking. And then, just when it seems like this is it, you hit the trapdoor. You knew this depot had a forgotten root cellar. Zoya's map didn't lie. You throw yourself into the dark, slam the door shut, and fall through a floorboard onto frozen vegetables and regret. It smells like onions and miracles. You wait 2 days, eat half a turnip, then emerge, shivering but free. Mostly. You loop back east, avoiding towns, talking to no one. You sleep in haystacks, steal fire from smoldering trees, and teach yourself how to chew frozen birch sap like gum. It's disgusting, but weirdly satisfying. Along the way, you meet a man named Alexei, a trapper. He lives alone, doesn't ask questions, and offers you a rabbit leg and a story. Once, he says, a bird flew across Russia, looking for spring. But it never found it. Instead, it left songs wherever it landed. And one day, the songs melted the snow. You nod slowly. Did the bird survive? He shrugs. Doesn't matter. The songs did. You write that one in your mind, right next to Daria's name and the boy's laugh. By the time you reach the mountains, you've circled further south than ever before. The resistance cells are deeper now, woven into church choirs, hunting guilds, and even one troupe of traveling actors who double as messengers. They hide secrets in their plays. You watch one, dazed by cold and hunger.
It's about a prince who gives up his throne to follow a sparrow. Only later do you realize it's your story. Someone's already passed it on. You laugh, cry a little, and keep walking, because the snow is still falling, but the songs are falling with it. You wake up with frost in your eyelashes and the weight of 10 towns on your shoulders. There's a line of crusted blood along your boot. You don't remember how it got there. Probably the river crossing last night. Those ice shards are nature's version of broken glass, only prettier and more judgmental. The mountains loom like sleeping giants, their peaks sheathed in silence. This is the Altai Range, or so says a wandering monk you passed 2 days ago. He was traveling with a goose named Ivan. Said Ivan was smarter than most bishops. You didn't argue, because by now you've learned not to question weirdness, especially not when weirdness is helping. Your contact here is called simply grandmother. No one gives a surname, just grandmother. You expect a kind, crinkled lady with a shawl and tea. Instead, you meet a woman who could probably arm wrestle God. She's squat, built like a barrel, and her handshake could grind salt into diamonds. "Welcome," she says, wiping blood off a cleaver. "Lunch?" You nod carefully. Later, over suspiciously tender stew and toasted rye, she explains her role. She manages a junction in the message network. Her village is so remote that even tax collectors forget it exists. That's her power. Historians still argue whether these remote highland communities were resistance hubs or simply accidental sanctuaries. Some claim coordinated efforts. Others believe it was all just survival instinct wrapped in folklore. But when grandmother pulls a hollowed-out broom handle filled with scrolls and smirks, you stop caring about scholarly consensus. She has a map, a new one. This one looks like veins, arteries of escape, rescue, and rebellion. There's even a red...
Apparently, the Roost is a code name for the most elusive cell in the entire resistance network. Mobile, fluid, paranoid. A caravan that's never in one place twice. They say it was formed by a disgraced noblewoman who used her exiled status as cover to smuggle fugitives east. Others say she's a myth, a symbol stitched together from many forgotten heroines. Either way, your job is to find it. And bring it something. Grandmother leads you to a carved pine box, sealed with wax and bound with copper wire. Don't open it, she says, and don't let it fall into water. Sounds ominous. Good, it is. You carry it like a heart made of secrets. And then you begin your descent. The Altai path is brutal, steep, icy, and prone to avalanches. You use ropes twice, slide most of the way. At one point, a marmot watches you tumble past like it's judging your life decisions. You mutter something unkind about marmots and keep going. On the second night, you meet a group of even-key herders around a campfire. They feed you something unidentifiable, give you strong tea, and ask no questions. But one old man tells you this: be careful of the birds in the wind. Not all that flies is free. You nod like you understand. You don't, but it sounds important. The next few days blur. You travel by foot, cart, and once, memorably, on the back of a yak. Slow, smelly, but surprisingly warm. You cross into a new territory, where everyone wears thicker coats and speaks with a lilt you can't quite place. They call the land Zamorskaya, which roughly translates to beyond the sea, even though you're nowhere near water. It's a joke, apparently. That tracks. By now, you're listening for whispers. You learn to read the silence. A house with an axe left in the chopping block means danger. A prayer scarf tied to a doorframe means food. A lantern hung twice means go around. You live off flatbread and dried fish. You dream of warm baths and real pillows. You miss Daria and the boy. And even Victor, though you'd never admit that aloud. One evening, as you crouch beneath a pine tree eating pine nuts and freezing your everything off, a girl appears. Just appears. Like snow doesn't matter to her. "Follow me," she says. You don't ask how she found you. You just follow. She leads you to a caravan, 5 covered wagons, painted in reds, oranges, and silvers. It looks like a traveling circus. There's music playing, soft, melodic, half lullaby, half rebellion. You've found the roost. Or, more accurately, they've allowed you to find them. You meet the leader. She is not a myth. Her name is Arena. Her eyes are cold stars, but her voice is warm wine. She invites you to sit, offers food, and when you present the box, she takes it gently. "Thank you," she says, placing it on her lap. She doesn't open it. You respect that. Later, by the fire, you sit among jugglers, knife throwers, and seamstresses who all moonlight as couriers and signalers. They speak in code, yes, but also in song. Literal songs. Each note a message, each rhythm a map. You learn one. They teach it slowly, until your voice doesn't crack on the second verse. It's about a fox who crosses rivers and never gets wet. A metaphor, obviously, or a survival guide. Either way, it sticks in your bones. They ask you to stay. Not forever, just long enough to teach what you know. You do. You teach them the path from Tobolska, the mine tunnels, the code phrases, how to fake a limp to buy sympathy, how to hide a letter in a sleeve seam, how to be just forgettable enough. They absorb it like snowflakes on wool, quiet but lasting. In exchange, they teach you how to disappear entirely. One woman, Vesna, shows you how to mimic regional accents. Another, Piotr, trains you in the art of distraction using only a spoon, a coin, and a sudden sneeze. It's weirdly effective. You sleep in a wagon now. It creaks, rocks, and smells faintly of peppermint oil and rabbit stew. You feel something strange. Not fear, not hope, belonging. For the first time, you aren't a runner or a pawn or a fugitive. You're a fox in the song. You cross rivers, and you're not getting wet.
It's sunrise when Irena gives you the new name. Not a code name, not another alias like Marat or Nikifor. A true, bone-deep name used only by the caravan. It's ceremonial, wrapped in song and wrapped again in laughter. They call you Vetragon, Wind Chaser. You pretend it's silly, make a joke about sounding like an off-brand perfume, but secretly, it feels like your skin finally fits, like the wind didn't just chase you, it followed you. Because now, you're no longer the hunted. You're the map. The next few weeks settle into a rhythm, if you can call an existence filled with sudden departures, false trails, and stashed crossbows a rhythm. But it suits you. The roost moves fast, never the same place twice. One day you're in a birch glade performing a puppet show that doubles as code delivery. The next, you're posing as a spice merchant's apprentice while smuggling instructions sewn into spice bags. You're getting good at this. Too good, maybe? Because one night you overhear something that curls cold through your ribs. A whisper from a messenger just in from the west. The Okhrana are coming. The Tsar's secret police. Not fully formed yet, but real enough. Shadowy, organized, and terrifying. They wear plain clothes. They speak local dialects. They blend in. Historians still argue whether the Okhrana's roots go back this far, 1700s rather than mid-1800s. Some say Peter's intelligence network had no name. Others believe early frameworks existed long before anyone dared to name them out loud. But you've seen the faces, heard the accents. Not all the people chasing you wear uniforms. Irena pulls you aside that same night. "We need to scatter again," she says. but we need someone to stay behind. You already know what she means. Draw their eyes, you say. She nods. Give them a scent. Lead them east. So, once again, you become the bait. But this time, you're better equipped. Vesna gives you a ring with a hidden blade inside. Pedar hands you a pouch of dried berries that double as ink when crushed. Irena hugs you tight, then slips a thin scroll under your sleeve. If they catch you, burn this, she whispers. Not even we are ready to share it. You don't ask what's on it. You don't want to know. It's safer that way. You head out at dawn, posing as a tinker. Your cart is a masterpiece of misdirection. Hidden compartments, false bottom crates, a fake wheel that holds a knife in its hub. You take the long route, meandering slowly, but always eastward. You sing the fox song under your breath, even when no one's listening. Especially when no one's listening. In a village near the Irtysh River, you drop off coded medicine. In another, you pass a poem that, when read backward, gives details on where to meet. In yet another, you throw a staged tantrum in a tavern that earns you a punch in the jaw and a crowd of very interested eyes. Good. Let them watch. The roost needs time to vanish. A week in, you feel them. They don't announce themselves, of course not. But you catch the same faces twice. A cough you've heard before. A merchant who walks like a soldier. They're following. You draw them further. Sometimes at night you hear distant whistles, bird calls, messages. You respond with a flick of your lantern or a foot pattern in fresh snow. It's become a dance now. You and the watchers. A chase. The wind again. One night you stumble into a monastery offering soup and silence. The monks don't ask questions. They let you sleep on warm straw. In the corner of the refectory, someone has drawn a small fox in charcoal, nearly hidden behind an icon of Saint Paraskeva. That's all you need. They're watching with you now. You leave at dawn. Your route takes you near another depot, smaller than Tobolsk but no less guarded. You drop a false message there, suggesting an uprising near Lake Baikal. You know it will delay them, send them panicking, or, ideally, divide their forces. It works, mostly, until one of them catches up. He's not like the others. He's quiet, patient, looks like a traitor, with a red scarf and calloused hands. But when he speaks, you hear the same tone as that interrogator back in Ust-Kutsk, the one with the salt-sour breath and the bored cruelty. You're a long way from the mines, aren't you? You don't answer. He doesn't press, just offers you a piece of bread, smiling like a crocodile in a fur hat. Tell your friends, he says, the Tsar has lost. He doesn't follow you after that. You're not sure why. Maybe he's satisfied with the message. Maybe you're not worth the chase anymore. Or maybe, just maybe, he saw the same thing grandmother did, what Daria whispered before you left, what the roost sings under their breath. You're more valuable as a myth. And myths don't die. They scatter. That night, you make it to the meeting point, a lonely pine grove, where the trees twist like dancers in pain. You signal. Once, twice. Nothing. Then, out of the snow, a hand, a face, a whisper. You're pulled into warmth, into wool, into arms. It's Irina. They bought it, she says. And you realize you're not bait anymore. You're the fox that turned and bit the hunter. They've named the pattern after you now, Vetragon's Loop, a decoy strategy copied across 4 regions. You hear murmurs that another group used your exact cart design last week to smuggle an entire family out of a burning village. You're not sure how to feel. So you lie down beside the fire and stare into the sky. There are no stars tonight, just snow falling like memory. But that's fine, because you've become the wind. You no longer ask where the roost is headed next. You just start walking when the wheels creak, when the fox song fades into a hum and someone quietly unties the horses.
The world has become a board game of silence and movement. You're always between hiding and flight, like a shadow stitched to a wagon's edge. Tonight, though, there's a shift. Not a large one, just a different weight in the way people breathe, the way Vesna oils her knives twice instead of once, how Pyotr tests his lockpicks with fingers a little too tense. You ask no questions, but Irina answers anyway. "There's a prison break," she says, not looking at you. "One we didn't start, but one we must finish." You blink. Where? Verkhoyansk. You try not to laugh, try not to cry either. Verkhoyansk, one of the coldest permanently inhabited places on Earth. Siberia's frost-bitten crown jewel. Even in June, it can feel like January. The locals joke that you can spit and hear it shatter. People get sent there. No one goes to Verkhoyansk, except you. Because someone inside that frozen nightmare is too valuable to lose. You get no name, just a description. She wears green beads and never blinks. You're not sure if that's helpful or terrifying. Maybe both. The roost fragments again. Classic fox move. You take only two others, Vesna and a quiet boy named Lev, who doesn't speak but can mimic bird calls so accurately it's eerie. You travel as fur traders this time, which gives you an excuse for thick cloaks and stoic expressions. On day 4, your sled overturns in a snowdrift, and you lose a box of salt. Vesna swears in 4 languages. You just laugh because your cheeks are already too numb to frown. Historians still argue whether the Verkhoyansk exile colony was used mostly for political prisoners or as a death-by-weather sentence. You mutter. Vesna smirks. Feels like both. When you arrive, the town doesn't greet you, it tolerates you. A cluster of wooden buildings, half buried in snow, with windows permanently fogged and doors that creak like complaints. Everyone looks the same, gray-faced, downcast, speaking only when necessary. You check into a lodging house. The landlady eyes you suspiciously, but the coin you offer makes her squint and shrug. You get a room with a frost-encrusted window and a blanket that smells like old potatoes. You sleep in shifts. No one talks much. Until the knock. It comes on the 3rd night. Soft, rhythmic, deliberate. 3 taps, a pause, 2 more. You open the door to a girl, maybe 13, pale, wide-eyed, but standing like a tree in wind. She doesn't speak, just hands you a carved piece of bone shaped like a feather, then disappears into the snow. You turn it over. There's a symbol scratched on the back, 2 intersecting triangles. You show it to Vesna. Her eyebrows rise. "The contact," she says. "That's her mark. The girl is your entry." You follow her the next evening, trailing from one shadow to the next. Through alleys, past a chapel, across a half-frozen creek that cracks ominously underfoot. Finally, a longhouse. Just another dark blur in a town full of them. But inside, firelight and green beads. She's older than you expected. Maybe 40, maybe 70. Her face is unreadable, like the surface of a frozen lake. Her voice, when she speaks, is sandpaper dipped in vodka. "I know who you are," she says. "You're the wind." You smile despite yourself. "You don't blink," you reply. She doesn't smile. Turns out she used to be a court tutor, taught noble girls how to speak French and wield subtlety like a blade. Exiled for corrupting minds. She now runs the closest thing Verkhoyansk has to a resistance node, a quiet web of teachers, herbalists, and defectors pretending to be broken. But they aren't broken. Not yet. "Someone's coming," she tells you. 3 days from now, a new batch of prisoners. One of them matters. You nod. "We get them out?" She shrugs. "If we can melt a river." She's not kidding. The only reliable path out is across a river that freezes differently every year. Some say it flows backwards once a decade. Others believe it sings if you're quiet enough. You're skeptical. Still, you scout it the next day. It groans under your boots like an old bear. Lev tests it with a stick, then chirps twice like a sparrow. That's his way of saying, I wouldn't bet my soul on this. But you'll bet something. On the morning of the third day, the wagons arrive. You watch from a hill, the wind slicing at your cheeks like jealous knives. Figures spill out, thin and hollow-eyed. You scan them quickly. Then, green beads flash. Not around the neck, in the hand, a clenched fist holding them up like a question. You nod once. Game on. The breakout is fast and silent. No storming the gates, no dramatic explosions, just a chain of distractions. Lev starts a fire at the tannery. Vesna stages a brawl in the tavern. You cut through the back fence and lead two others into the white swirl. Green beads follows. The guards notice late. You hear a shout, a shot, but you're already at the river. It cracks beneath you. You don't stop. You remember the fox song. Step where it's thin. Leap where it's worse. Trust ice to hate you equally. Then it won't play favorites. You all make it across. Barely. That night, in a hollow carved into a hillside, you sit beside the woman. Her name is Zoya. She still hasn't blinked. You're not wind, she says. No, you're frost. She hands you the beads for the next one. You sleep, not well, but long. When you wake, Lev is gone, left only his spoon and a single feather. Fox rules, never say goodbye. The beads hang around your neck now, cool against your chest, ticking softly like a metronome with every step. Zoya is quiet as you travel west again, tracing a slower, wider path through the frozen lowlands. She speaks in riddles, old proverbs, and once spends a full day humming a French lullaby under her breath. You suspect she's cataloging everything she sees, each tree, each slope, each pause in the wind, a lesson waiting to be taught again someday. You begin to think she might be the roost's next matriarch. When you reach the outpost near Yakutsk, you expect a coded welcome, or at least a warm broth and a knowing nod. Instead, you find smoke, the curling black kind, charred beams, a collapsed roof. The air smells like scorched grain and regret. Vesna is already there, standing among the ruin like she's grown roots through the ash. They found it, she says. No emotion in her voice. You bend and pick up something from the rubble, a wooden toy fox split in half, its tail burnt to a stub. For some reason, this hurts more than the wreckage. You look at Zoya. She blinks for the first time. They'll think they won, she says. You turn to Vesna. What now? She doesn't hesitate. Now we scatter. Again. Because the roost was never a place. It was never the cave, or the cart, or the cabin in the pine woods. It's not the song, or the puppet theater, or even the secret tunnel under the chicken shed, though that was awesome. The roost is you. It's the people, the flickers of rebellion hiding inside lullabies, the pocket-stitched maps, the bakery symbols. You travel alone now. Not always, but more than before. Sometimes with Zoya, sometimes not. Word of your actions has stretched beyond rumor. You catch snippets in taverns. A wind that eats footprints. A fox whose tail holds fire. A trader who sleeps in trees and turns bullets into coins. One night, near Lake Baikal, a child stops you on the road. Her boots are too big, her scarf slipping from her nose. She asks, "Are you the Vetragon?" You pause, then say, "Sometimes." She smiles and hands you a pie. Just a pie.
You sit under the stars that night, eating it slowly, surrounded by silence and the scent of pine smoke. The wind rustles through the branches above you. Somewhere far away, a whistle, birdsong maybe, or something more. You rest your head against a mossy log, the beads warm from your skin, and you think about that first day, back when your boots were new, your fingers softer, your heart filled with dread. You're not that person anymore. You don't walk with fear, you walk with intention, because now you know. Exile wasn't your ending, it was your beginning. You close your eyes. The snow falls again, gentler now, like powdered sugar over a quiet dream. The wind outside is calmer now. The firelight, whether real or imagined, flickers in low, lazy patterns. Everything feels slower, gentler, like the world has let out a long sigh and curled in closer to itself. You've traveled so far. From a rattling sled through forests of frozen silence, to dim-lit rooms filled with whispers and maps and fox songs. You've met teachers, tricksters, and silent boys with clever eyes. You've run beneath ice-heavy moons and left false trails that scattered your enemies like startled deer. You've become a myth, and not just in stories told by others, but in the quiet power you carry inside yourself. You were exiled to Siberia, and yet, somehow, it made you free. Your hands learned new skills, your ears caught meanings between words, and your heart learned to beat not just for survival, but for purpose. Now the journey slows. You picture snow, soft as breath, layering itself over the prints you left behind. You imagine your name, your real one, or your secret one, or just that quiet you whispered in the wind, being carried by people who will never meet you, but feel changed all the same. So let yourself rest now. Let the fire warm your toes, the hush of snow wrap around your shoulders. Let your heartbeat match the slow rhythm of a fox's paw print across an untouched path. You're safe. And sleep, well, sleep is just another form of escape. Close your eyes. You've made it through the cold.